Hello, 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 and welcome to this week's Everyday Inclusion and Belonging, where we talk about everything under the sun related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I'm super excited for this conversation today. So a couple months ago, Jess Nava and I were in conversation with somebody that was trying to sell us something. And I started counting about 15 minutes into our call about how many times he called us you guys, right? He just consistently kept misgendering us. And it was a light bulb moment for us as we said, you know what? Inclusion in selling and in the sales process, it is the very first experience that most people have with a brand. And if a team can't be doing this inclusively, they are in some big trouble. So I brought this amazing panel together to talk about inclusion in the sales process. So I'm Mo Berkner-Boyd. I am a white woman with mid-length red hair. I have some new frames that are gorgeous. I'm wearing a vaguely animal print. I don't know what this blouse is. And behind me is a bookshelf. And I am joined by three amazing panelists, and I never want to screw up people's bios, so I asked them to send me, and I will be reading slightly. Kim Waller and I have known each other for about 3-4 years. I'm delighted to have you. You've been on a couple of these conversations with me. Senior client partner, DEI and organizational strategy with Korn Ferry. So she serves Korn Ferry clients by bringing strategic enterprise-wide solutions that deliver high impact. Her approach to help organizations move from theory to action through the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kim's built talent and risk management strategies for Fortune 500 companies, including financial institutions, higher ed, construction, manufacturing, large government entities. She's a skilled advisor around DEI, risk, change management, HR, team coaching, and skills development. Literally anything that you can think about, she is so good at. I love being in conversation with you about strategy and approach, Kim, in this work. She holds a master's in learning and organizational development change from Northwestern and a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Go Badgers. She and I have the same alum. Trisha Clark is a seasoned sales executive with experience in selling category-defining SaaS solutions to enterprise companies. With a proven track record of success, Trisha has consistently driven revenue growth and delivered innovative solutions to meet the needs of Fortune 500 clients. Mother of 2 boys, y'all. She and her husband just got to take their first vacation in a long time, kid-free, so give it up for Trisha. She understands firsthand the experience of the struggle of balancing family and career. And we're hearing so much about that, aren't we, right now? This has fueled her passion for advocating for equity and inclusion in the workplace. Currently, Trisha serves as Director of Sales for Socrates AI, a virtual assistant platform that simplifies enterprise processes and enables employees to focus on their purpose and innovation. Trisha believes that inclusive selling is not only the right thing to do, but also a strategic imperative for businesses that want to thrive in today's diverse and ever-changing marketplace. And I should have mentioned, y'all, I had these people are phenomenal. So I had to shorten their bios. Like Kim serves on 1 million boards. Trisha does the same. So you're getting, if you are not connected to these three, get connected to these three. Last but not least, Eric Stein is Chief Commercial Officer at Skillsoft. Before joining Skillsoft in 2021, Eric held various global leadership positions at SAP, including Chief Revenue Officer at Qualtrics and Chief Innovation Officer for SAP America, where he designed and implemented a large-scale go-to-market transformation. Eric is known as a global technology executive with extensive is the word I'm trying to say, strategy and growth experience with a focus on customer engagement and field operations. Earlier in his career, Eric held successive executive positions at SAP, VirtuStream, and Blackboard. Eric is a member of the Dean's Advisory Board at Boston University School of Law and founder of the Eric and Neil Stein Markman Scholarship at BU Law and Northwestern University, the first permanent endowments at each institution to dedicate scholarship funds to the LGBTQ plus community. Y'all, Eric is a lawyer. He got his JD from Boston University School of Law, is a member of the Bar Association for the US Supreme Court, and holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in poli-sci and history from Northwestern. So you two Northwestern folks. He lives in Connecticut with his husband and 2 children. So what I love about this is you all have such varied backgrounds, but a focus on really creating these environments where people can thrive, right? And sales teams and organizations that are looking at this holistically. And, as we were prepping, what was interesting is we were all telling stories about some of the things that we had personally experienced, either in sales organizations that we were a part of, or that we had experienced in delivering, right? And with customers. And Eric, you've got 2 stories in particular that I'd love to kick us off with, because it really highlights how important this work is.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Mo. I am thrilled to be here, and I feel honored to have been invited, and I feel really humbled to be part of this group. So thank you for including me.
You.
And just for the record, I also have medium length red hair. I shave it off before it left on its own. And I am wearing a blue sweater and a gray blazer that my husband gave me for my birthday last year.
Nice.
So yeah, so you noted, I'm a lawyer. I worked in government. I started my career in my 20s in Washington, D.C. And while I was doing legislative work, I had developed an understanding of how technology could be used to transform business. I put together a conference, and it got a little bit of coverage, enough to get me excited at like 27 to be in the Wall Street Journal and have this event covered. And through that process, I had several job opportunities in the tech industry. And I took one of them. And in my earliest role, I had started as chief of staff to the divisional president, and then was put into a sales role. It was right around the time of September 11th. Markets were uncertain. And if you weren't in a product development or a quota carrying role, you either had to be in sales or development, or your job was at risk. And that's how I got started in sales. But I had colleagues who, were 10 plus year industry veterans who didn't think that I belonged in a sales role and that I had cut the line. And I had found out after a couple of weeks in the role that the rumor was that I had slept with my boss, that I had slept with him, and that was how I got this job. And I'll never forget this, because we had an all-team meeting about a week or so after I had learned this, and we're all out to dinner, and I just so happens I'm seated next to the person I'm told is spreading this information. I said, I need to be 100% clear that I am completely not above sleeping my way to the top, but I'm totally above sleeping my way to the bottom. And I felt like it was something that needed to be confronted. And we have become friends and colleagues, because I've often found sometimes if you confront people with the way they are excluding others and you draw their attention to it, they realize the power and the impact of their behavior. But yeah, it was a formative early experience for me.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And I think, it's interesting, because we have, it feels like in many organizations, the sales organization is like the heart of bro culture. And the place where more bad behavior is tolerated because they're a rainmaker, or they are right. And so, there's so much data, y'all, about companies it's showing up. You can scroll back in my LinkedIn feed, and there's a woman who posted a video of herself, and she's an executive meeting with a sales team and saying, I need somebody else. You all didn't realize it, but you had me on your chatter and your locker room talk about me and my appearance, and right. And this stuff still, right? This happens. Companies are, the people making buying decisions now are paying attention, right? And this matters. There's some great research out saying that, whether it's a values alignment or, right, that they're going to walk away and they are going to choose to take their dollars and their contracts to organizations that make them feel like they're included and belong. So yes, there's the internal, but what are you doing to equip your teams as they are going out and interfacing with potential clients to do that in an inclusive way? And Eric, you had another sort of light bulb moment when you all were presenting at a client and there was a mismatch between who your team was and who your buyers were.
Yeah. Are you sure you want me to tell this now? I feel like I'm the only one talking right now.
No, because they'll jump in. Thank you for that understanding, right? I asked you the question, so you're not hogging the floor. Well done. Good allyship in action. That was model behavior, y'all. Did you pay attention to that? And any one of us could talk about that. So we could say, for all of you, the experiences that you have had, how has that shaped your thinking and your approach in how you lead teams, right? Whether you've been the one that was excluded like Eric, or you've shown up and you've realized that you are pitching to an organization and you brought all the white guys, or, whatever it may be. How do you think about this, and how are you intentional about inclusion in selling?
Yeah, I'll jump real quick, Trish, because mine is quick. But I think when I think about it even in terms of the sales strategy before you get in front of a client. Do you know the client? Do you know the buyer? What do you know about their backgrounds, right? That's just like sales 101, but really being transparent about it. And I think as the evolution of the buyers have continued to become more diverse, it is really being explicit. Not only, did you go to the same school? Did you not go to the same school? Do you like hockey? Do you not like hockey? But being really clear and open around the demographics of the buyer and not succumbing to the narrative that, it doesn't matter, right? Right? It doesn't matter. I was just on a call relatively recently where the key buyers were 3 African-American women. And I was asked to come in as a strategic advisor, but it was near the end, but it was before we had already actually gone into there. And I reflected back at our team, right? Versus who was sitting in front of us as the active buyer. And I was like, how would that have played if somebody hadn't put a pause on it and said, number one, we need to reflect our buyer. And number two, we need to bring somebody that not only reflects our buyer, but that's going to be additive in terms of value to this discussion. So the expectation that, well, gee, it's me and my boys and this is how we always roll. And this is my team that I sell and we win anyway, continues to evolve. So teams, even in the strategy part, need to begin to think more inclusively and in more transparent ways around how they prep for it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Kim. And it's so funny because that's sales 101. That's the stuff that every salesperson studies their clients. You start to know their culture, what they care about, the way you sit there and you look at decks or proposals and you're thinking, how are they going to interpret this? What are the red flags for them? You need to take that same view, as you think about it in this way. And really, I think a lot of times sales is the one that has that full view. A lot of times in a long sales cycle, a lot of different teams, partners, players get brought in and out. The sales lead or the sales management is a lot of time the only ones that have that end-to-end view of what has that interaction been for the customer and how have you represented yourself as a whole. So it's their responsibility to really make sure that's embedded throughout, I think.
We directly.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mo. We directly challenge our sales teams to do that. A part of our value proposition is we have an extensive library of content on environmental sustainability, on corporate social responsibility, on good corporate governance, on diversity, equity, inclusion, fairness. And that means that as part of our sales process, we want our sales teams to read the ESG report. Who are they giving to? What does your customer stand for? What are their corporate values? Are they really well aligned to them? I was working with a client today who aligns all of their variable compensation to objective measures of living the organization's corporate values. And I always think it's really important for salespeople to understand what room are you walking into? Are you going to be comfortable in that room? When they come into our space, are they going to be comfortable in our space? How are they judging? Kim and I, you and I talked about this on the last call. How are they judging all of the nonverbal cues? And is what they're seeing or feeling matching up with the words coming out of your mouth? Because we've been saying DEI and now ESG for years, but can you actually observe it in the behavior?
Yeah, I think I want to double click on a couple of things that I just heard. And I think it's really, so Kim, when you were talking about, right, being brought in, one of the things that, so we released an inclusive selling module in Everyday Inclusion. And one of the things that we talk about is some of the microaggressions, right? And a microaggression that could have been a microaggression if you were simply brought in to be the Black woman, that versus, and you said it, being additive, right? And actually being involved. So invited and involved are two different things. So y'all, if you are thinking about, you see the demographic of who you're going in to pitch to, and you invite somebody to be the token, your buyer is going to see that all day long, right? And so if you're going to do it, you actually have to do it correctly, right? They have to be involved. And Kim, I love what you said, additive and strategic. And Trisha, you were saying the same thing, right? You're thinking about end to end, that really the only person that might have the 30,000 foot view is the person that is leading that deal, right? And so to be really strategic about it. I think one of the things that we tend not to do is think about why you have lost deals and to really take a hard look in the mirror, because y'all are hearing from three business development executives that get it and are living it. They are not the norm, right? So you're hearing from them what our best practice is. Let's talk about that audit, right? And who showed up, and why do you think, Kim, so many organizations aren't willing to do this audit, right?
Well,
and to look at why they might have lost the deal as it relates to DEI.
Yeah, no. So I think there's a couple of things. I think, again, sales 101, is that part of your best practice? You know, some organizations, believe it or not, they don't do a lot of postmortems, learning from what was successful, what was not, in terms of how, from a baseline process, they do it consistently. So there's a bucket of organizations that don't do it at all. But for those that do, have you created a culture where there is comfort in discussing the good, the bad, the ugly, versus you come in after I've lost a deal, do I come in and give a package narrative around why I lost it?
Oh, it was praise, right. Or it was, they had some bell or whistle, not
right. That's right.
In the way
that's right. And the last thing I'll say, or the third thing I'll say is, do you have a way to get feedback from the clients that if they don't offer it, that you can somehow discover the nuances of why, separate from price and features of whatever it is that you were selling, that you get more information around how can you be more successful in terms of how you show up. And sometimes some clients will tell you, like the one that you just described. Sometimes they won't, you'll just lose. So how do you create a culture where that feedback is integrated into how you sell and how you're successful?
Yeah, and I'm curious either Trisha or Eric, if you've got any thoughts on that in terms of, are you all, have you seen success or any best practices around taking that hard look in the mirror? Because I think that it is always easy to say it was for some other reason.
Yeah, I will say I had a past employer where we started to do it where it was through kind of these close one interviews, and it was more of an unbiased view. And I found that to be really good data, because if you have maybe the sales leader or someone higher up that's going and trying to figure out why you lost the deal, I mean, chances are the prospect's not going to say to them that it was because of the way the organization treated them or the people that showed up anyway. So I think trying to get that kind of unbiased kind of feedback from them is important. But even if you can't do it that way, I mean, at the end of the day, I think most sales professionals are pretty intelligent. And if you really sit down with the sales team and the members of it and really try to take a hard look at some of the deals, are there one or two things around this that we could have done better? It certainly could have helped, right?
And I think calling it out specifically, right? So we're not talking about features, benefits. We're not talking about what we're talking about is the experience that we created, right? And looking at it truly through a DEI lens. Yeah.
So I'll share the story of the experience that I had now. It's a good 10 years ago at this point. I was working with a client that my team and I had been working with for a while. We were in a highly matrixed organization, and the account team had put together an executive briefing for the customer. And there were maybe 10 of us from the company and 10 of us from the customer in the room at the same time. And it was clear from how the customer showed up that diversity and inclusion was a core value to them. It was not words on a poster. It was who they were. It was how they spoke. And our team pretty much looked exactly the same. And like it could have been a scene out of Mad Men, except the clothes weren't as good. And I don't think it really landed with the customer. And it was so stark. My president and I, after we left the meeting, discussed it, that we didn't like the way that we showed up in that meeting. And so we confronted the customer directly about it, right? We specifically asked, how did you perceive this? And they gave us honest feedback. They stuck with us through the sales cycle. And it was fortunate because a key value proposition of our solution was a sourcing platform that allows companies to root out vendors who engage in human trafficking, or the elimination of unconscious bias in vendor selection. We leaned in really, really hard to that. We brought in the people who were responsible for building that and why that was important to us. And we had the opportunity to course correct. But we did a debrief with the team because it was clear that they didn't take the time to think about how they showed up in that meeting or who they were talking to. And that's always really important to me. I'm going to tell Trisha a story that she doesn't know very quickly from the time that we were at Qualtrics. But my time at Qualtrics started at an internal meeting between myself and the then CEO, who's a really groundbreaking and inspiring leader. And I'm in a room full of people, mostly men, in Provo, Utah, and I'm talking openly about my husband. And I got several messages from people who were on my team or elsewhere in the company at the time, sharing pieces of their story and where they were in their journey, which didn't necessarily involve being out. And it's a theme that I try to address in how I lead, because in all other respects, I look like a fairly wealthy white cisgender male. And yet I know what it's like to either be excluded or feel excluded. And you never know what somebody in the room isn't showing you, obviously, but may need to feel included. And so that's always in my mind in terms of the way we run our team, that whether or not we can see your diversity doesn't matter. Who you are matters, and whether or not you choose to share it with us should be irrelevant.
Well, and I think that there is, y'all, we've talked a lot about sort of the strategic approach. So much of this is those interactions, right? Is somebody asking you about your wife, Eric, right? Is somebody making an assumption about, you know, and these are the little things that create, you know, we want inclusion to be a silver bullet, something really easy, but it's hundreds of things. And so how are you finding out those identities? How are you finding out, for example, whether your client is dyslexic and you're sending them loads and loads of stuff for them to read, right? That they're like, I'm actually going to go with this other person because they're making it really easy for me. Everything is video, right? And everything is, right, everything. So there's so much nuance. I think, Trisha, I'd love to hear, like, what can leaders do to prepare their teams to consistently think about inclusion? And I think there are some systems things to do, but how are they showing up inclusively and consistently thinking about this as a part of the process?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think at the end of the day, as much as a seller maybe wants to do it and take that into their approach, if they're not getting the support of their leadership and the rest of the organization, like, it only goes so far at times, right? So I think for sales leaders, the way that they treat their teams, the internal meetings, right? Are they trying to include other groups and making sure to get everyone's ideas or giving people a chance? I think the more sales team, you know, the salespeople see their leader take that approach, the more they're going to naturally be, you know, making that part of their practice when they're interacting with customers.
Man, it always comes back to modeling, doesn't it? Kim, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah,
about
no,
consistency?
I was just thinking the modeling it and being able to empower your team. You know, we say inclusion and diversity and inclusion is important because you're going to be able to bring together new perspectives, new backgrounds, et cetera. Well, in the sales process, what better way to do that, right? And we also say it's important because it's important for you to mirror the preferences, likes, dislikes of your customers so that you understand them in a more meaningful way. What better way to activate that, right? In terms of both behaviors as well as the processes that you have in place as you operate as a team. You know, one thing I'll throw out is I'm thinking about the leader that's listening, the sales leader that's listening and is saying, yeah, that's fine, but, you know, I've had a homogeneous team. We won in general. I hear you saying I should have more diversity on my team. I can't find them. I don't know what to do about it. And if I just happen upon a client that has a diverse buyer, what am I going to do? Because my team is my team. Eric? No.
I'm sure. I'll take it. I think the first thing I would challenge if I were having a one-on-one conversation with that leader is, I don't believe you can't find it, right? I just don't believe that you can't find it. You're either not looking for it, or you're looking for reasons that it's not a fit. I, at one point in my career, had the opportunity to go through a really egalitarian recruiting process where I met people of all experiences and all ages and all backgrounds, and there was no way to jerry-rig the process. It was all blind scoring. If you knew somebody who was a senior executive, they couldn't put their thumb on the scale. And as a result, it resulted in a recruiting experience where I met probably the most diverse and interesting group of people I ever worked with. I was also at one point recruited by a company where I was on a Zoom with another middle-aged cisgender white male who said to me, we're not even 5 minutes into the conversation, one of the things we value is DEI, and I don't understand how hiring you would advance that. To which my response was, well, that's something my husband would find hilarious. And you're seeing me over Zoom. You don't know if I'm 7 feet tall or if the chair I'm in has wheels. Like, we make all of these assumptions about inclusion and belonging that actually put a filter on the recruiting process. So I reject the premise of the question. You're either not looking for it or you're looking for the wrong things, in which case you've dumbed diversity down to something you can see. And that's not the point.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting right now too, right? The data again about sales teams may have been able to get away with this in the past, and people are voting with their dollars. And it goes back to that audit question, right? You don't know, maybe you've been successful. You don't know how successful you could have been because you don't know the deals you've lost. And there's transparency now, right? People are talking about what it's like to work with a company. There's nowhere to hide. Trisha, any last thoughts? And then I'm going to ask the famous question that I always ask, which is I need you all to leave me with the truth bomb. But Trisha, any thoughts on that last? I love, Kim, that you were like poking the bear there, right? Because there are people that are watching that are like, we're doing fine, and I can't find anyone.
I will just say that I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of fantastic, diverse sales professionals. So there's plenty out there. So second, what Kim and Eric said to that, need any help finding them, feel free to ask me. But
Right.
no, I would just say, I've actually had the opportunity to be on a few teams where there were really inclusive male leaders, and we had really diverse teams. And I think, though, at the same time, while they had great intentions, that sometimes when equity starts to get overlooked or unconscious and conscious bias come into play. So, I remember we were told, myself and the other female, you're getting the harder accounts, they're tougher, it's a lot more work. We know these guys are going to, not do as good of a job with it. So, while good intentions can be there, and if you're doing great in some ways with, diversity and inclusion and things, just don't forget to look at the equity piece of it too.
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground. It was really interesting, even as we were putting together the inclusive selling module. One of the things that, as you all know, people that are really good at this work are really good at asking questions and listening. And that you can apply that same tool, right? Like we say, if you can focus on 2 areas, one is how are you making your meetings as inclusive as possible, right? Everything from materials and having live captioning and, asking about times of day, right? We have a whole thing about meetings are sort of the secret sauce. And then asking good questions to find out who, right? Inclusion, the superpower of curiosity, really good business development people, you already have the skill set. It's applying the lens of DEI to that. So, all right, y'all, give me one last truth bomb about, we did cover wide ground here. What do you want people to remember, know? What's your mic drop around inclusion? I'm going to start with you, Eric.
I knew you were going to go to me first, and I was going to kick it to Kim, not to be inclusive, but because she's played the game before. Okay. Here's my truth bomb. Whenever you host a meeting, a sales meeting, a team meeting, a leadership meeting, make it a priority to invite 2 to 3 people that don't belong in the room, so they know what belonging feels like. Find your high potentials, your early talent, your 20-year veterans who are experts in what they do and they don't want to be leaders. Put them in the room. dry run everything. Let them experience things they wouldn't already experience, because you can't visualize what something looks like if you can't see it and experience it. And you might actually just learn something from their perspective as well.
Love that. Trisha?
Yeah, no, I guess I would just say, I think when you're gonna put people in there, put people in a position to succeed, really make sure that they're equipped to really not just be at the table, but come to deliver, and, recognize that people have different communication styles, right? So maybe it seems like they're not being involved or including themselves. Maybe that's just not the form that they feel comfortable in. So sometimes you're just gonna keep other people's approaches and different considerations and factors to build that kind of environment.
Love. All right, Kim, bring it home.
Yeah, no. So, there's this notion of being radically human, right? And understanding that we are still, I don't care, even if it's AI, we are still human beings making human connections as a part of the sales process. And the more authentic you can be in that human connection, the more effective you're going to be in it. And recognizing that Eric and I and Trisha, yes, we are all human beings, but we're uniquely different. And so being able to authentically connect to one another in this radically human way is key to success. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is a key part of that.
I appreciate the three of you sharing your brilliance. I can't wait to go back and watch, and you already sparked a bunch of things for me, and to be like, oh yeah, that. Those of you that are watching and a part of the Everyday Inclusion community, really, truly, these three are great individuals to be connected with, right? You got to see a little bit of their learning, their approach, right? They're naturally doing this. I want to remind you that most sales organizations are not naturally doing this, right? You really have to be intentional about it. And get out there and do the next right thing. Thanks, everybody.